Welcome to session 2 of So You Want to Provide Childcare in Your Home. Session 2, we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting. One of the things that's really important is that you think about this work as if you're going into business for yourself. And so it's important that you create a way to plan for your expenses and your income in a way that ensures that you can pay yourself for this work. Because without doing that, you're not going to be in business very long. But it's also important that you balance that with the need to ensure that your families receive affordable childcare. Because without that, then it really defeats the purpose of having childcare. So we have families that need you to be affordable, and we have you and your needs to run a business and to be able to pay yourself for that. So we're going to talk through some of that today. Some of the things we're going to hit on are some recommendations around income, some ideas of some of the expenses you might want to anticipate, and also how to help you plan for sustainability. As always, we are going to provide contact information. So if you go at the very back of the presentation, there'll be links to both folks at the Greenville First Steps office and at South Carolina DSS's office, who can help you kind of navigate the systems to help you better make sure that your child care that you're offering in your home is high quality, accessible for families, and also supportive of your goals. As always, before we get started, it's important to say that Greenville First Steps is not a licensing entity. Anything that we share here shouldn't be seen as superseding any state laws or local regulations. We're here to give you advice based on our experience working in and with child care providers. But that advice should be just seen as just that, advice. And if you have any questions about any regulations or permitting or applicable state or federal or local laws, it's really important that you ask those questions yourself, get good answers, and don't find yourself in a position where you may be going with rumors or hearing information for the first time without making sure that you check it with the right folks. So please just make sure that you stay on top of your regulations. The first thing we really want you to consider is just a group of questions. So before we get started, we recommend that you pause the presentation here and that you go back to where you downloaded this video and download the budget planning worksheet, because we're going to talk through each section in that worksheet. So we'll stop here for a little bit, give you a chance to download that. It's a great exercise for you. Okay, hopefully by now you have downloaded the budget planning worksheet and you're ready to get started. So the first question you really need to think about is how many children will you serve? Now, it's important to keep in mind that you cannot serve more than 6 children in an in-home child care setting. That is 6 total children under the age of 12. And so if you're going to provide care and you have children in your own home, then those 2 children, or the number of children you have, count against your 6. So let's say that you have an infant and a school-age child of your own. They're going to be in childcare with you. So now you have slots for 4 additional children. So that makes it a little more difficult when you're making budgets, because instead of paying children making up 6 of your slots, now paying children make up 4 or 5 of your slots. And it's just a little harder to make ends meet. That said, just kind of keep that in mind. The second thing you really need to think about are how old are the children you're going to serve. Are you intending to open this to serve school-age kids or just preschool-age kids? Are you want to focus on infants and toddlers? It's important that you design a childcare setting around what you're most comfortable doing, and then go and find clients who fit those slots. Otherwise, you might find yourself with 6 infants and toddlers, which isn't really a great environment for anybody, because you didn't really kind of plan ahead for those slots. It is important to note that another DSS regulation that might affect your work is that we recommend that you not have more than 2 infants in an in-home child care setting. So if you have your own child who is an infant, then we would recommend you really only take 1 other infant at a time. The next thing you really want to think about are the hours of your program. Are you going to run a full day program? For most people, a full day program runs from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Or you can run a half day program. Maybe you're just going to be open from 8 to noon, or maybe you're just going to be open from 1 to 6. Understanding how many hours you're going to be open will help you create a budget that works for you. Also, how often are you going to be open? Are you going to be open 5 days a week? If you're reliable childcare, you're probably going to be open 8 to 6, 5 days a week. But maybe you're just doing this on Tuesdays and Thursdays for a mother's morning out opportunity. So maybe you're just open 2 days a week for half days, or maybe you're open 5 days a week, but just in the mornings, or maybe you just want to be open on Fridays. The amount of detail that you can think about when you're creating this budget will make it easier for you to find the right families to serve. You wouldn't want to, for example, talk to families about being open 5 days a week if you really only be open two, because it will be really frustrating for them if they find out that you're starting to close when they need you to be open. Are you going to provide meals? Most families expect that if you say you're going to provide meals, that their child is going to receive a hot breakfast and a hot lunch. Infants are going to receive formula. Um, if you're going to provide hot meals, are you going to prepare hot meals, or are you going to have some other vendor bring in hot meals? In other videos, we'll talk about different ways you can secure different vendors to help you with your food needs or some of your other programmatic needs. But it's really just something you need to keep in mind. Will you allow drop-in service? So are you going to be open 8 to 6 and you're going to charge everybody the same amount, whether their child comes for 3 hours or 7 hours? Or are you going to charge an hourly rate, which encourages families to maybe not use you all day, 5 days a week, but maybe just when they need you? Um, that flexibility is really helpful for families, but it's cheaper for families, which means they're going to pay you less, which means you're going to make less money, which means it might be more difficult for you to make ends meet. So just something to think about. We often get asked the question, well, how much do I charge? And there really is no standard rate. What we've provided here are some averages that represent Greenville County averages, but your rates are going to vary. They're going to vary based on the location, based on the number of hours you're open, based on the types of families that you serve. They're going to vary based on the services you provide. But in general, if you have an infant and you're open 5 days a week and you provide meals, you're probably going to charge $180 a week. You can see there the daily rate, about $40 a day, or maybe you're just going to charge an hourly rate of $15 an hour. If you have a toddler, which is a child who's 12 to 24 months old, then you're probably going to charge a little bit less, $160 a week, and $40 a day and $10 an hour. Preschoolers, toddlers require less constant supervision, and so it's a little easier to fit more of them into your program, so they become a little bit less expensive. If you're serving a preschooler and you're open 8 days, 5 days a week, 8 to 6, then you're probably going to charge $150 a week, $30 a day, $10 an hour. And if you have a school age kid, then you're really going to get more down to closer to $100 a week, $20 a day, or $8 an hour. Now, again, these are Greenville averages. They are not industry standards. This is not a best practice, but these are kind of the general numbers that most people charge. Some other things to think about. We talked about meals. If you're not providing meals and you want families to bring their own meals, then you probably want to reduce those rates that we looked at on the last slide by $20 a week. So if you are serving a school-age child and you're not serving meals, you're probably going to get down to more like $80 a week. If you have more school-age kids, then one of the expectations, especially during this time when kids are out of school, is that there be more tutoring and homework support. Well, that's not something you're going to be able to do a whole lot of if you've got 6 children in your home. So perhaps you want to consider charging a little extra to have a tutor come in. And perhaps that tutor comes in and works 1 hour per day with a specific child. And so maybe you want to build that cost into your weekly fee. Also, some families would like for you to be open longer than 8 to 6. So if you're interested in being open more than 8 to 6, then perhaps you want to add an extra $3 an hour for each hour. So if you wanted to make your hours 7 to 6 and you had a school age kid, then perhaps you would add an additional $3 an hour per day. So maybe you would charge $115 a week instead of $100. So let's look at the income section of the budget template. So again, this is the document. Hopefully you've downloaded it by now. If not, pause here and you can do that. The document is found right below the video. So if you look at the chart here, what we've done is we've basically have helped you calculate what is your weekly income going to be. So in the first box, you can see for preschoolers, there is a preschool there. If we had 5 preschoolers and we charged $150 a week, then we would bring in $750 a week. Now, a question to see who's paying attention. If you have 5 preschoolers, how many extra children can you have? 1. That's right, because 6 is the total number of children that you can serve. So what you can do here is you can kind of go through and say, all right, let's see what it would be like if I had 2 infants, 2 toddlers, and 2 preschoolers. Then you multiply those out by the weekly rates and you get your rate. And down here are the recommended weekly rates. Again, these are just suggestions. They're not really the answers, but at least it'll tell you kind of what you're going to do. So what that's going to do is it's going to get you to a number here that is your weekly rate. So if you have 6 children, then how much money will you make per week? So let's say you had 6 preschoolers at $150 a week, then you're looking at a weekly income of $900 a week. And so that helps you figure out what your weekly income is going to be. And then you can measure out your month. So if you know you're going to be open 4 weeks out of the month and you're making $900 a week, then you're making about $3,600 a month. So that's how we can calculate income. The other thing to think about, though, are your expenses. So for us, we've broken out expenses into 2 types. There are category 1 expenses, which are really expenses that are calculated on a per child cost. So every child participating in your program is going to have a fixed cost based on the number of children, the number of days, the number of weeks. When we get to category 2, they're more broader. They're a cost whether you have 1 child or 6 children. So one example of a per child cost would be food. If you're going to feed children, then it's going to cost you $20 for infants a week, $15 for toddlers, preschoolers, or school age kids per week, and then you're gonna figure that out. So if you have 5 toddlers, preschoolers, and school age kids, then you would multiply 5 times 15, and that would get you $75 a week, which is about what you would then budget for food. Infants are more expensive because they require formula. If you require the families to bring formula, then perhaps you don't charge the infant rate, and perhaps then your infant weekly rate is cheaper because families provide their own formula. So supplies are the next expense. So we think about supplies as being like uh, equipment, maybe classroom equipment like books or crayons or markers or paper or toys. But they could also be things like diapers and towels and spare clothes, just things that you think children are going to need that you're going to have to start accumulating a supply of. But it could also be blocks and Hot Wheel cars and different things for kids. In general, you should think about each child needing about $10 a week for supplies if they're a toddler, preschool, or school age kid, and probably $5 a week if there's an infant. So again, if you've got 5 preschool kids, then you're probably going to spend $50 a week on supplies for all of them. Category 2 expenses are expenses that you're going to pay the same amount whether you have 1 kid or 6 kids, but they're real expenses, and so it's important to kind of put them in your budget. So one example of a category 2 expense would be insurance. So you have homeowners insurance or renters insurance. Does your insurance allow you to cover care for children in your home? Probably not. And so you're going to have to change your insurance coverage with your insurance carrier, and there's going to be a cost associated with that. So we estimate that cost to being about $15 a week. So if you went to your insurance company and you said, I'm going to start doing this, they're going to up your rates. They're going to charge you $600, $700 more a year. Break that out as a per week cost, and you get to about $15 a week. You're going to be spending more money on utilities because you're going to be home more often, but you've also got more bodies in there. So it's going to get hotter faster. Your air conditioner is going to be on more. You're going to be cooking more. Your utilities are going to go up. So we estimate you should spend about $40 a week more on utilities than you typically would if you were just watching your own family in their house. So the second thing you got to think about is take home pay, because eventually you want to be able to pay yourself. So what we recommend is that you pick a fixed amount that is your take home pay, and you go ahead and say, I'm committed to paying myself this amount. Now, this is your own business, so at the end of the day, you're also going to pay yourself all the money that you bring in above what you spend. but this will at least give you a place to start from when you're thinking about a budget. So $200 a week, not great income, but it's enough income to maybe help you out during these difficult times. The other thing to really think about is that you probably are going to need some sort of support. So whether that's a substitute teacher who comes in and helps you out 1 day a week so that you can take some time off, or whether it's an assistant that comes in the afternoons so that you can clean up and get ready for the next day, or maybe it's somebody to prepare meals, you're probably going to want some sort of support. And so we would recommend that you budget for that as well. So now we look at the expense section of our budget, and we start seeing things that are starting now to add up. So if you look at the top row here, food for toddlers or school age kids, we're going to budget $10 a week. Let's say we have 5 preschool kids, then we're spending $50 a week for food. Infants, $15 a week. We have 2 infants. Now we're spending $30 a week on infant food. So you can kind of see how that breaks out. And then if you go down to the second category down here, we've got the category 2 expenses, which are probably going to be just yes or no kind of things. Do you want to budget some money for utilities? Do you want to pay yourself? Do you want to have money for an assistant? As you start to create a budget, you're going to start to see there's some wiggle room here. So, for example, you may be able to pay yourself $400 a week, like we've recommended on this form, but maybe you need to start out with $200 a week, like we recommended here, just to kind of help you create a budget. So, stop for a second and see how you did. By this point, you should be able to calculate your income for a week and calculate your expenses for a week. And if you've done it correctly, then your income and your expenses should be about the same. Or perhaps you brought in more money and you're spending less money, and that's going to be the money that you use to pay yourself. So how did you do? Again, this is not an exact science, and so you may have to find some wiggle room there. Perhaps you budget less for food, or perhaps you do have to charge a little bit more in order to provide the kind of services that you want to provide. Perhaps you're going to not be able to afford having an assistant come in 5 days a week. Maybe they only come in 1 hour a day to help prepare meals. So you're going to kind of figure out those kind of things. In a future episode, we're going to talk about collections and ways to bill families and ways to ensure that families are paying you. But a couple of things you really just keep in mind up front. One is this really only works if you're at capacity. So if you've created a budget for 6 children, because that's the kind of program that you plan on running, and you only have 2 kids that are paying, you're going to run out of money really quickly because you're not bringing in enough income. So you really want to make sure that you're always at capacity. You don't want a family to come in tomorrow and say they want to start in 2 months. You want them to start paying tomorrow. Otherwise, you're going to go 2 months with one fewer child in your program. So you really want to kind of keep those kind of things in mind. You also want to make sure the parents pay in advance. So one of the experiences that we've had is if you don't collect money on Monday, then they'll tell you they'll pay you on Tuesday. And when they don't pay on Tuesday, they'll tell you they'll pay on Wednesday. And eventually you're a week behind. And when a family is a week behind, it's really easy for them to get 2 weeks behind. And when a family is 2 weeks behind, you're never going to catch up with them. So it's really important that every Monday morning, as they bring their child, they bring a check or they bring you cash or they pay you through Venmo. You want to make sure that you're collecting money before you provide the service for that week. Now, that doesn't mean they have to pay you weeks in advance, but on Monday morning, you should be paid. If not Monday morning, then at least Monday afternoon when they pick up their child. Keeping a waiting list will help make sure that you're at capacity, and not floating non-paying clients is just really important. It's very, very easy for you to have a good heart and say, I'm going to do whatever I can to help this family. The next thing you know, they owe you for 4 weeks. And if they've got an infant and they owe you for 4 weeks, you're talking $700 or $800 that they owe you. They're not going to pay you that once they owe you that much money, no matter what they tell you. And you're going to end up providing a service for someone who's not paying, which is hurting you doubly. One, you're out expenses because you're paying for food and clothing and resources, but also you're holding a slot for that child when another family could be there paying you money. So you're losing out money on that situation. So you want to make sure that you don't have families that aren't paying. That concludes what we were going to cover today. We will be doing some other sessions on budgeting and finances and how to perhaps find credit and how to find other ways of collecting revenue from families. All those are going to come in later episodes. We really just wanted to kind of keep this one simple today. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and so we would encourage you to contact Ann Lee Buck from our office. Her email address is here, or contact Cynthia Lara. Her email address is here. And then again, there are some forms from DSS that you have to have in order to be a registered child care provider, and those forms are here. And if you click on them on the presentation, they actually will take you directly to the DSS link. So we thank you for your time today. We hope this was a useful activity. We hope the worksheet helps you kind of think through some of your expenses as you start to decide whether opening up in-home child care is a good fit for you or your family. Thank you again. Have a great day.